Hey YouTube, figured I'd bring you on a little photo shoot of my car today. It's actually a pretty nice day. The lighting's good, the clouds are good. Kind of got the itch to take some photos, so just quickly wipe the car down. I'm actually in a little abandoned road behind my house, so figure I'd bring you along, see if we can capture some cool images. And as I'm shooting, I'd figure tell you kind of what I'm thinking about and why I pick certain angles and like what my goal is, and then we'll go back to the computer and edit some of these. So let's get started. So here we are at the first setup. I wanted to get a side shot of the car. I haven't done something like this in a while and just want a good profile shot. So kind of here's the setup. So I have the tripod here pointed directly at the car. The sun started coming out a little bit, so my focus point is actually right here on the door handle, so kind of right in the middle of the car, and I'm just going to shoot a quick 3 exposure bracket to keep some detail in the sky, and then also keep the detail in the wheels because they tend to go a little bit darker. So let's go ahead and take those first series of shots. So from there, I'm just going to work my way around the front of the car counterclockwise. We'll get the front 3/4 shot here. Now, since we are moving to the front, I do have my circular polarized filter on, so I am going to turn that and take 2 series of shots here. I also think that I am going to, since we are at a slight angle here and I'm going to get some fall off, I'll probably take a second series focused on the front wheel, and then a second series focused on the back wheel. So my focus point will be right here on the first one, right here on the second one. So let's take that series of shots now. All right, so here we are at setup number 3, and I've switched over to the Sigma 105 1.4. I am still shooting at 1.4, so we're still going to do the trick where we focus on the front wheel and the back wheel to keep the car in focus. Rather than doing HDR, I'm just going to expose for 0 on the exposure meter, and we're going to see what we can do in post and just hope everything goes as planned. I also do have my polarizing filter on here, so we're going to take 4 total images. We'll take 1 of the front wheel, 1 of the back wheel, we'll spin the CPL, and we'll take another series of those shots. So let's do that now. So something that I've really liked doing lately is just taking my camera off the tripod and shooting handheld, or actually one thing that I really like is shooting on the ground. So it gives you that really low angle, and when you have a cool sky, it actually helps accentuate that a little bit more because it gives you kind of that upward angle and shows the sky more. So here's what I'm doing. I actually have my wallet rested under, so it's not at a huge angle. But this is kind of what we're looking at from a framing aspect. And then I'm going to do the same thing. So I will take 4 shots. I'll take 2, spin the polarizer, and then take 2 more, focusing on the front wheel and then the back wheel. So let's do that. All right, so now we're back in the computer and we are going to edit some of these photos, and I'm just going to go one by one through the shots that we took. So let's start with the side one. So we shot a 3 bracket on this one. So you can see there's the different exposures. We are going to shift click and then right click and photo merge HDR. So we're good on that one. We're going to go ahead and click merge. On the next series of shots, while that's working, let's go ahead and shift click all of these. We will right click and we'll go edit, open as layers as Photoshop. We'll do the same thing with this next series. So just shift click, right click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. And we'll do that same thing with this last set. Edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. So our HDR image came through on the first one that we did. So just to get this ready, what we'll do is we'll drag out a linear gradient here. We just want to get some more drama in the sky. So I'm going to pull down that exposure just a little bit, pull back the highlights, maybe hit a little bit of clarity. And then on the bottom, we're going to kind of do that same thing just to bring some attention to the center of the frame in the car. And then here, let's pull out a radial gradient just to lift some of the shadows in the car. And we'll up the clarity just a little bit. And then let's go ahead and take this into Photoshop too. All right, so we have this first image in Photoshop ready to go. So let's figure out what we want to do with this. I think overall the image looks pretty good. I think the first thing I want to do is, I'm not really happy with how dark this window came out. I think I want it a little bit blacker. So let's grab our pen tool and we're going to go around. We're going to go around and just make a quick selection of the window. Just click and draw, get a good selection of the inside. Then we're going to right click and we're going to click make selection. 0.5 pixel feather. And then we're going to hit Command J. We're going to put that on a new layer. So as you can see now, we just have a copy of the window. And then we're going to come up here, we're going to change that blending mode to multiply. Now, one thing right off the bat that I don't necessarily like is there's a lot of blue that got pulled into that. So we're going to go up and make an adjustment layer. So we're going to go to hue and saturation. We're going to right click right here and click create clipping mask. And then we're just going to pull the saturation down on that just a bit. And then I think that looks a little bit better. It just helps blend that into the back so it's not as dark of a blue, it's more of a gray color. It's subtle, but I think it looks better that way. And then, like, honestly, from an overall standpoint, I think this is a pretty solid image. We can probably add a little hit of light in the corner here. So grabbing the gradient tool, having white as our foreground color, selecting foreground to transparent, and then having the radial button checked. We can probably just draw over like the sun's coming in from the side. Let's put a mask on that. Grab our brush tool, painting in black, and just get rid of some of it on here. Just help provide a little bit of atmosphere there, and we'll pull that opacity back. Let's take this, let's make a merge visible layer because I'm good with this where we're at right now. And actually we can just flatten this, I'm fine with it. Let's make a copy of this. So we have our background layer now. Let's hit Command J to make a copy and we'll just sharpen this really fast. So we're gonna go to Other, click on High Pass. And now, depending on your camera resolution, you're going to change this number, so it may go down, but a good number for my camera at 24 megapixels is 2.0, and you can see in here, you just want the edges. You don't want to bring any texture and details, so if I crank this up, you'll see we're starting to get some artifacts and things like that. So the lines, the number represents what's going to be sharpened. So if we go down to like 1.8 or 2 or 1.5. Somewhere right in that lane, so you don't get those artifacts, but you get those lines. So if we click OK, you're going to get a gray layer that looks like this. So you can see what we did. But now where the magic comes in is when you change your blending mode. So you can change your blending mode to soft light. Soft light is the most conservative amount. So if we click in here and we click on and off, you can see the little bit of sharpening that it did. So it's off now and then it's on. So you can see how much that sharpened. So as you go up, if you go to hard light, it's going to sharpen it more. And then if you go to vivid light's going to be the most. So it just depends on your image and what you're looking for. So I normally keep it at soft light though. Then if you really wanted to take this kind of to the next level, like I think this is fine for like an everyday Instagram shot. I think it's overall good image. There's not a lot on the road that needs cleaned up. The sky's well exposed. The car's well exposed. I got some good color in the background. If you wanted to take this the next step further, what you could do is you could start cleaning up some of these reflections in through here. And I mean, that just takes some time. You're gonna use the healing brush, the patch tool, the clone stamp, maybe even some actual painting. But essentially what you would do is just go through with like the patch tool and the healing brush and just kind of clean up some of this stuff so you get that nice smooth transition instead of those harsh reflections. And then you would just do that all the way throughout the car. Some of this stuff in here, like this tree, just kind of pulling that to a clean area and letting Photoshop do the work of blending in those, and then you just have to go back and clean some of that up. So here's an example of what I did with that image. So I went through and cleaned up some of those reflections and just got them out and cleaned it up a little bit. So it's all just how much time you want to take on an image. But I think for now with this one, since we have 3 or 4 more to go, we'll just call this good. We'll just go ahead and save this out. We'll go to File, Export, Save for Web. And then just change this. If we're uploading to Instagram, we'll just change this to 2048. Click Save. We'll call this Profile. And we'll click Save. So I think that's good for that shot. Let's go over to this shot here. So this was one where we just did the single exposures, but we focused on the front, the back, and then we changed the filter to cut reflections on the top and then the side. So our first 2 images are a group and our bottom 2 images are a group. So let's go ahead and let's turn this on for all of them first and go to Auto Align Layers. So click OK. So you can see there was a little bit of shift in the tripod, but Photoshop hooked us up. And so you can see here what we were doing with the different focus points. So we had this one was focused on the front wheel. This one was focused on the back wheel, so now we don't have that fall off. You can see just how much difference that makes. We'll be able to keep the whole car in focus, but still keep this bokeh in the background. So let's go ahead and click those 2 layers. We'll come up here to Edit, and then we'll go to Auto Blend Layers. We're gonna do Image Stack at the bottom. We'll click OK. And now you can see we have an image where the front wheel and the back wheel are both in focus. So let's hide these layers really fast, and we're going to do the same thing for this side. So let's shift click both of those, and we'll go to edit, auto align or auto blend layers. Same thing, click OK. All right, so again, Photoshop has done its job, and we have the back wheel in focus, we have the front wheel in focus. This is what it looks like from the mask, but these two layers are really the ones that we want, so we're just gonna move this up. Just turn these off. These are the two layers that we are concerned with now. So we have a polarization for the front of the car, and we have a polarization for the side of the car. So now what we can do is, let's go ahead and hide this side layer with a mask. And then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna grab our brush tool and painting in white. So we'll switch our foreground colors using X. You can use your bracket keys left and right to make the brush bigger and smaller. And we're just gonna go in and we're gonna paint on the side of the car here to cut out those reflections. And you can see, because we were shooting on a tripod and we did the auto align layers, everything's lining up perfectly. And we can just go in and we can paint in and out the different layers to cut out some of those reflections. All right, and then if we zoom out, you can see what we did. We just toned back some of those really harsh reflections and bright spots. So let's go ahead and make a merge copy of that. Let's go in and we are going to rotate this ever so slightly just so the car is, I really like the front lip of the car to be level. So we'll go ahead and hit enter on that. And so since we had the 4 different images, I didn't go through and do that initial edit in Lightroom. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here to Camera Raw. So we're going to pull out a linear gradient. We're just going to go straight down. We are going to pull back that exposure a bit, pull back the highlights, add some clarity. We might actually bump up some saturation and maybe push some blue into this. So I think that's good. And then let's do the same thing on the bottom, but we don't want to push any blue in there. And I actually don't want to push any saturation. I actually want to pull the saturation down just a bit. We can probably pull that down a little bit more. And then I am going to take the radial gradient, kind of do the same thing. Actually, I always do that. Let's just zero everything out. And then I will pull this out. Get kind of a good feather. That way you don't see a hard transition between that and the background. And we'll just pull the shadows up just a bit. And then probably push a little bit of clarity into the car. Maybe pull the shadows just a little bit more. Maybe actually push those highlights and maybe add in some contrast. And I think that looks pretty good. Let's go over to the hue and saturation. Now this is all personal preference, but this is where you can start messing with some of the colors. So if you want let's say you want the greens in the background to pop a little bit more, you can pull the saturation over, or if you don't want them to pop as much, you can bring it back. And then also with the luminance, if you want to make those darker or lighter, depending on what you're looking for, I think let's darken that down a little bit. You can also play with the sky. If you want darker, you can also change the hues. So if you want to push those blues more towards like a cyan color, you can do that. Same thing up here with the aquas. And you can kind of crank it all the way to see which colors you're affecting. And then same thing with the greens. If those are looking a little bit fake, you can bring it back more towards like a yellowish color, or if you want to push them more towards like crazy. It just kind of depends on what you're looking for from an image. But I think overall that looks pretty good. If you want, you can, I know on the other one we showed the high pass sharpening, but here's another option for sharpening. You can push this up, and then same thing we did with that high pass where you just want to focus on the edges. You can use this masking tool and hit Alt or Option, and you can slide it over so you can see we just want to affect the lines, and then you can change your sharpening up here. And then of course if you have any noise in your image, you can play with some noise reduction here. So we'll click OK, and you can see here's what we had before and after. So overall, pretty good. Again, I don't think we're gonna go super overboard on this edit. If you want, you can pop in that little bit of sun flare and atmosphere there in the corner. I kind of like it. It brings the bright to dark and kind of gets you going across the screen there. So I think for now, let's call that good for this image. I'm actually going to break this video into two parts. So in the next video, we're going to go through the editing of those last two shots. So if you have any questions about what we've done so far, leave them in the comments below. If you like this video, I'd love if you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So until next time, take care.